we did add on this bar chart.
Yeah.
We split vertically the 2013, October 2013 data to show the difference too between terrestrial and terrestrial mobile.
Okay, excellent. So does everyone see that, so that on the color chart, there's a little difference from where we were previously? And then,
Is there a way that, I know there's a way, but is it possible to include the actual data values on the top of those bars? Would that be helpful?
There, in the body of the report, we have a chart then that has the actual values. It's not in the executive.
this is the
summary.
executive summary, so we don't have that pulled out. It's trying to really capture that over time growth that's happening, just however we want to look at that growth today, but that there is growth happening from 11 to 13. Top of page 4 has just the bullet points. There were some clarifying edits done, and there were also the second full paragraph. There was a recommendation to use the words "heed our recommendations to further the deployment," and that you will find in your current version. Is that right? Yep. Okay. So we're going to skip, as Bernadine suggested, we're going to skip the next set of bullet points because that will key off of when we come back to those. So page 5 is a listing of the task force members. Please look it over, make sure it's accurate to your own spelling, name, organization, how you would like to be listed. Yeah. Yeah. So then on page 6 of what we have, in the previous report that you saw in December, we had the listing of all the activities we did as a task force. We've actually moved those further back into the appendix, so that it's clear that it's informational, it isn't substantive to the report itself. So we then really start the report with this discussion of 2013 legislative activities. And in this case, I don't think there's a lot of, there weren't a lot of changes proposed because it's a narrative that we have looked at previously. So page 6 and page 7, as well as all the way, I think what I want to draw your attention to is where the section begins, state of broadband, page 8 of the bound document. And here is where I think we get the first discussion of something that we had a quite lengthy discussion of at the previous meeting on how to present an item, and that is the paragraph that begins the 2012 Task Force report stated. So we're on that paragraph, just to be clear. There are no changes up until then.
Well, let me finish this one, but we actually, if we're gonna stay in process, I don't know if we're gonna bounce back and forth, or we do these all separately.
Where was it? That's why I need somebody to
Yep,
flag.
I apologize.
Okay.
We're just getting a little bit
So
of process
page-
here. Back on page 5, there was a proposal to put in some international. things.
Okay. So let's go back to page 5.
This document notes page numbers.
Yeah.
That was from the Matt Gross document, which
Which
was.
no longer really
Yeah.
fits.
But it was-
So where was it? And Matt,
It was
the,
in the executive summary.
it was in the executive
It was
summary.
It was right after the first 3 paragraphs of the executive summary.
Okay. So this is a proposal to put in how we are ranking globally into the executive summary. The state broadband goals do call for a measurement of how we're doing globally. So I think it's a question of if we want to include this in the executive summary at this point. So can we get this up on the screen? That's this chart so people can see it. Thanks.
Margaret, just to
Yeah.
clarify, are you, is the question on the table whether to include it in the executive summary or whether to include it in the body?
Well, that's where it was suggested, so I'm only going by what was suggested. I think Matt would have to speak to that,
Okay.
why it was chosen there versus anywhere else. So, Matt?
Well, I think if you think about the purpose of an executive summary, summarizing the report, and I think what I would suggest is an overall comment on the progress towards goals. I think an argument could be made to put it here based on that.
Okay.
Otherwise, that narrative about our global competition is absent.
So, other points of view on this? It just was it doesn't appear in the later report. I mean, I think one of the issues is, it's easier if it appeared in the later report to pull it up into the executive summary if you wanted to.
I mean, I don't have a problem, I don't want to speak for the group, but I don't think it's necessarily, in my opinion, it's an issue of where it appears. I just think it's important that it's addressed, since it is one of the goals, to talk about where we are globally. And we've talked about how difficult that's been to measure, and we haven't really resolved that issue. So I think it's important that it appears. And maybe it's, again, if it appeared later in the body, reference it in the executive summary, I personally wouldn't have a problem with that.
I don't have a problem either. I think the issue was that we were trying to demonstrate that there isn't a lot of progress being made countrywide, particularly when you consider also the definition of broadband in the U.S. as 4-1.
So, I think that part of the issue is the language, embarrassingly low. It denotes a tone that we haven't usually taken in our reports. So I guess if you're open to allowing a rewrite of the language, I'm more open to how we include this in the body of the report somewhere early on related to the statute. And I think we need to make sure that this is the latest and best measurement in terms of a global measurement. I think it says Bloomberg News, seems credible, but there might be others out there, and that's where we get into a bit of the issue of, you're gonna have to sort of hunt here a little bit and take some faith to know that we need to make sure that this is up to date. And I don't know if Connecting Nation.
I wasn't going to speak to that. I was going to say two things. One, if you cite Bloomberg News, we're going to need a link to the article, Matt, that you pulled that off of, or whomever pulled that off of, because we're going to need to footnote it. We can't just say Bloomberg News. And two, just talking with Diane here, it seems that this would fit best on page 18 of the bound version, where we're talking about aside from the state speed goal, the other elements of the statute. And you see where it says, the second paragraph on 18, with regard to the third, top 15 related to countries.
Yeah.
It seems that would be the ideal place to include something like this.
So if folks are open to that, I think on page 18, we could increase our discussion.
We could say that while it's United States isn't Minnesota, this table shows where the United States ranks.
Right. Does that make sense? I mean, I think that I don't know, here's my only concern about pulling it up into the executive summary totally, is that in my mind, it's an important piece of how we rank as a country. However, is it gonna make a difference to these folks who have to actually make policy decisions in Minnesota? I think we have far more compelling stuff that we can throw at them about what needs to happen in the state of Minnesota. So I just worry about putting in an executive summary. Putting in the body of the report, I think is good. I think it enhances it. So if folks can live with that, that's where we're gonna place. Objections to placing the data?
I would just echo Matt's comment that I think that's a great solution, elegant. Thank you, staff, for finding a good spot for it in the body. I would argue that it is an important, that if we could insert in the executive summary a very short summary of the content.
Maybe a
that-
sentence.
A sentence that would bring that important context into the executive summary, that I'm very comfortable with that.
Okay? Yeah.
Are we substituting that, the entire body of the language there? I mean,
No.
you're gonna tweak that. When we get into the issue of sourcing Bloomberg, we talked about consumers paying more for their connections, but it's much more complicated than that. Are we gonna have something then that discusses how
text
some
needs
other
to be
countries may
rewritten. I'm gonna be-
subsidize their internet services?
I think we need to have rewritten text there that more captures what we're looking at, that in some countries, they are fully subsidized by the government, in other cases, they're not. There's a more of a apples to apples comparison. I don't wanna get into too much commentary about in the report that would denote some point of view that goes one way or the other way. I mean, I think we're better off doing just the facts.
We don't have time to reach consensus.
Yeah, and so I think if we do a factual-based paragraph about what is happening, you know, at the top, in the middle, at the bottom, that will probably suit our needs. Is there a chance that one of you is going to be mad at us for doing that? Yes, but I'm gonna just go with it, because I just don't think we can accept the narrative part of this paragraph without a rewrite.
I think that's fair, and a good precedent for as we go forward, that if we agree on the substance and the meaning, to allow staff an opportunity to rewrite to make it more consistent tone. And that's.
And we will see it all again before it's totally, okay, all right.
My personal
But-
opinion is it's much more important that we illustrate that other countries are employing different methods, but here's what their results look like.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to comment on our opinion of what we think is a better or worse method.
So, okay, if we can live with that, then let's keep going.